Prayagraj. So let us introduce Dr. Ashish Mishra. Dr. Ashish Mishra was born in Allahabad. Right now it is called as Prayagraj of Uttar Pradesh, and is currently working as assistant professor in the Department of Education since 2018. Jagat, he is working in Jagat Taran Girls Degree College, a constituent college of University of Allahabad. He has completed Master of Education, Master of Commerce and BCom from University of Allahabad and BEd from Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. And he has been awarded with BHU medal for standing first in the B.Ed examinations in 2008. So he is a lifetime member of Indian Association of Teacher Educators and published more than 20 papers in different national and international journals, and also he has edited some number of books. He has specialized in psychological foundation of education, educational measurement and evaluation, and teaching of commerce with a keen interest in methodology of research and technology of education. He has immense leadership skills and administrative capabilities as he is serving as Assistant Proctor, Coordinator of Internal Quality Assurance Cell, Editor of College Prospectus, to name a few. He has conducted so many online workshops and webinars as coordinator, and he has given number of guest lectures through online at various national forums. So with this small introduction, I request Dr. Ashish Mishra to handle a session on learner-centered approaches and effective classroom management. Sir, can I request you, sir?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to extend my thanks to NRI Institute of Technology, Krishna district of Andhra Pradesh, to provide me this opportunity to be with you all. My special thanks and congratulations to the coordinator, Dr. K. Samashiv Rao sir.
Yes, sir.
I also say thank to I also welcome the participants of this 1 week FTP because they are the main stakeholders of this nice 1 week workshop. So today I will be presenting how you can effectively manage your classroom. These techniques will work for both types of classroom, that is online as well as offline, as we should use a blended teaching approach where online and offline modes go together, because we cannot over overemphasize online teaching and learning only, because offline has its own advantages. Sir, is my PPT visible to you or not?
Yes, sir. It is visible, sir.
Okay.
So kindly make it as a presentation.
Yes. Now, is it fully visible?
Yes, perfectly, sir.
Okay. Should we start now?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
Okay, sir. I would like to be it more interactive, and I will be providing you the scope to interact with me in between the presentation. But I would ask all the participants to be focused on this presentation so that you can use my learning experiences for making your classroom more lively and more effective, because we all are teachers. We will be having, I think we will be having teachers from across the disciplines, science, humanities, especially science teachers, because your institute is an engineering institute. So uh, irrespective of the discipline you have or you belong to, you have to go with me through this presentation, and I will be providing you the scope to communicate with me during this session. So I am going to discuss learner-centered approaches and effective classroom management, because earlier this approach of learning was teacher-centric. We will be discussing what is the basic difference, but let us start with the first slide, where we will be discussing what is learning actually. Because I am from education background, and that too educational psychology, I will try to make this presentation more and more lucid and suitable for you to understand and act accordingly. Okay, now we will be discussing modern learner-centered approaches as well as effective classroom management techniques. But before that, we have to learn what is learning, and after that, what is learning environment of your classroom, because it is directly related with classroom management. Otherwise, you will not be able to manage your classroom effectively. And then you have to also learn what are the various types of learning styles the people have. Basically, we will be going to discuss 7 types of learning styles. And after that, we will be focusing on your learners, what is learner-centered approach, and I will be asking you to get your own reflection about your classes that you have already taken, and find out what you have to do now after this presentation in your classes. And last but not the least, we have to deal with how we can effectively manage our classes. So the first slide goes like this. What is learning? Here we can understand learning as a process of what? Of following. First, learning, by learning we mean active engagement of not only teacher, the learner also, the participants also. As say for example, presently I am the teacher, I am the instructor for this session, and you as participants are treated to be learner. So I will be interchangeably use these terms, students, learners, and so on, and you have to take note that what I intend to express. So learners means, say for example, here in this case today, you the participants, and I'm the teacher, I'm the instructor. So we have to be actively engaged for a purposeful learning, that is, which includes the process of learning, includes the process of active engagement, in which engaging and manipulating of objects, especially for science students, experiences for each and every students, and conversations in order to build mental models of the world. Mental models means you have to construct models through your logical imagination, and that too comes under the capacity of your abstract thinking, not concrete but abstract. If you are manipulating object, means you are doing manipulation with concrete things, or you are doing in concrete activity. And if you are building a mental model, means you are doing something that is imaginative and that is in abstraction. In the last, the references have also been given, and that they will be shown to you, and if the need so arise, the same will be shared with you also. And next, learning proceeds through prior knowledge. That is the second point of this slide. Means learning cannot start in a vacuum. Even a child learns how to ask for food by crying, how to express happiness through laugh. So the learner has something already in his or her mind or as experience, which involves enriching, building on, and changing existing understanding of the learner. Means what we have already in our mind, it can be modified also, it can be changed also. Means to change something or to modify something, we have something already with us, then only we can change and modify that already existing thing or knowledge or experience. Here, one's knowledge base is a scaffold, means helping hand, means to support something is called scaffolding that supports the construction of all future learning. Means with the help of prior knowledge, learning is a process which modifies the prior knowledge, and that prior knowledge scaffold and supports the construction of all future learning. That is the process of learning. Next slide. Learning is a process where interaction with complex social environment takes place. Means it's a social activity which involve people, the things they use, the words that we or they speak, the cultural context they are in. As say, for example, cultural context of Andhra Pradesh is different from that what is existing in Uttar Pradesh. We have to act accordingly. We have to abide by the cultural norms, the cultural context they are in, and the actions they take. These are the findings of some studies conducted by various psychologists and researchers, as well as that knowledge is built by members in the activity. Means here, in a nutshell, we can say interaction with complex social environment takes place under the process of learning. Next point of this slide, that is the fourth one. We are dealing with learning as a process here. Don't be confused, and I need your attention. Requires an authentic context. Requires an authentic context. Means to learn something, that learning will take place only when we are dealing with an authentic context, not with a vague one. Means learning provides learners with the opportunity to engage with the specific ideas and concepts on a need to know or want to know basis. Means something which is needed to be learned and something a learner wants to learn on his own initiative or through his own willingness. Means here authentic context may be of two types. First is a need to know, means a learner must know that particular thing, and the second one is queries or questions arising out of learner's own choice, that may be authentic. And last, process of learning. We are dealing with the processes. 4 of them have already been discussed with you people, and now the last process is learning needs learners motivation and cognitive engagement. Here I would like to emphasize on cognitive engagement, that it can be understood with the help of Bloom's taxonomy chart that I will show you at the end of this lecture. Here I am just noting it down, that is your cognitive engagement. You should note this point, cognitive engagement. Means your cognitive engagement is very much important to understand today's lecture also. When a learner is motivated enough and cognitively engaged, then only the learner will make considerable mental efforts and persistence, continuous efforts on the part of him as necessary for a fruitful learning to happen. Means if the learners are not motivated, if you are not motivated, then the learning cannot be fruitful. Why? Because your considerable mental efforts and persistence will not be present to make the learning fruitful. So mind it, in your classroom also your learners need to be motivated, and then only they will be cognitively engaged in your classes. Otherwise learning will not be fruitful for them or the learners. Thus, we can conclude that learning can be understood as the what we have already discussed in 3 to 4 last points. On the basis of that, we can conclude that learning can be understood as a process of acquiring new understanding, knowledge, behaviors, skills, values, attitudes towards something, and preferences, etc. We can also notice here that the ability to learn is possessed by humans, animals, and some machines also. There is also evidence for some kind of learning in certain plants also. Here in psychology, as I am the student of educational psychology, it's a part of psychology, it's a branch of psychology where understanding of human behavior, animal behavior comes under the purview of its study. Means if we talk about understanding of behavior or study of behavior, then we not only discuss about human behavior, we also discuss about animals behavior also. Next, we can conclude learning. Some learning may be immediate, means something you can learn immediately, induced by a single event only. Say for example, being burned by a hot stove or something which is hot. Our sense organs can sense that something is hot. So we can remove our hands if something hot has been touched by us, or facing shocks of cold waves, etc. So these learnings are immediate learning, and in most of the cases, learning skill or knowledge accumulate from repeated experiences. Means one learning experience, 2, 3, 4, and with the help of repeated experiences and through practice. Means learning may be immediate for some reasons or other, but in most of the cases it is the accumulation of repeated experiences and comes through practice. Not all learning can be immediate. The changes induced by learning often lasts a lifetime, and it is so impactful that it is hard to distinguish learned material that seems to be lost from that which cannot be retrieved. Sometimes we are not able to recall something which we have already gone through. So we get confused that I have lost this or I'm not able to retrieve it. The learning comes through practice also, but most of the cases through practice. Now, here learning part is over. Now we will switch to the classroom learning environment. We all know the meaning of environment, the definition of environment. Environment can be present in your classroom also, which needs to be taken care of. Otherwise, you will not be able to distinguish between positive learning environment, that is also known as supporting learning environment, and inhibitive learning environment, that is negative learning environment. Here we will be discussing the concept of classroom learning environment and its various dimensions, nearly 18 dimensions that we will be discussing today in this lecture or presentation. One by one, I will be explaining each and every dimension and focusing on its impact. Means, is it a positive dimension of learning environment or it is a negative dimension? You have to take care of that. And in case I think so, I can ask from the participants also about the particular classroom learning environment and ask their opinion about whether it's a positive classroom learning environment or it's a negative learning environment. So be careful and attentive so that we can exchange our thoughts. Okay, let's go. First, that is classroom learning environment or classroom climate, both are same. Classroom learning environment can also be called as classroom climate. May be defined as classroom conditions, physical as well as non-physical, processes and psychological stimuli which influence the educational achievements of the child or learner, was said by Dave in 1963. It also refers to those forces in the environment of the learners which have the potentiality to contribute to academic development of the learner. Means academic development of the learner may get affected through climate of the classroom. It consists of psychosocial, means psychological as well as social conditions, because man is a social animal as well as rational also. So in a classroom, there are psychological conditions and social conditions, combinedly said psychosocial conditions, that characterize the overall interpersonal feeling. Interpersonal means between, and intrapersonal means within. Interpersonal means between one or more students, among the students. Interpersonal feeling, tones, overall interpersonal feeling, tones existing within it, they affect the learning of students. Means the classroom climate, which consists of psychosocial conditions, characterize overall interpersonal feeling, tones existing within the class, said by Mishra in 2001. It was also observed that students observe more of the teacher's typical behavior than is usually available to outside observers, and they are directly involved in classroom activities. Here it is to be cleared for all of you that the student is the first and foremost active observer of a teacher's class. So other outsider observer cannot observe in so much as detail as a student observer directly involved in that classroom activity can, because he is directly involved in the classroom activity and his experience are more intimate as compared to any other outside observer. So the classroom learning environment inventories have been formed and prepared on the basis of observations arrived from students of classroom. So students' observations have been used to provide an accurate picture of classroom environment, not the outsiders. Means the experiences of students' observations have given preferences over the observations done by observers. Because why it is so? Because students are the active listeners and actively engaged in that particular class. Many researchers have found that students are the active observers of the class, so their observations only can be used as a basis to study classroom learning climate or classroom learning environment. Next, McRobbie and Tobin asked students in a study to describe their science classroom in general terms, making reference to the roles of the teachers and students. Means this point focuses on how the classroom learning environment inventories have been formed to study different types of classroom learning environment. Even I have studied in my research of commerce classroom learning environment for higher secondary students in my own research. Perceived school environment may differ from the actual one. Means the perceived means which we perceive, which we experience as a student or as an observer, means observation of a external observer as well as an internal observation, that is a student, may differ significantly, because perceptions can be different of students from that of the outside observer. That is why perceived school environment may differ from the actual one. And some other psychologists moves thought that perception is the primary determinant of manifest classroom behavior. Means we can have perception of the classroom as a basis to study classroom behavior. Now there are two more points. We will go through them within a short time. Students' observations have been used to provide an accurate picture of classroom environment by many researchers, as I have already expressed to you. And learning climate or classroom learning climate or classroom learning environment, all the same, is teacher-student interaction, means your interaction with your student, my interaction with my student at present with you in the classroom. The classroom may be online and offline. Nowadays, due to Corona, we are abiding by the rules of the particular governments to teach online courses, because offline classes need one-to-one connection, and it cannot be performed in the wake of this corona period, because we need physical distancing to be maintained. That is why we are dealing through online classroom. But the learning climate of online classroom will also be there, and offline classroom will also be there, with some differences, but most of the climate will be common to both of them. So here we will be discussing 18 dimensions of learning environment of a classroom, one by one. First, cohesiveness. Cohesiveness refers to tendency of a class members to remain friendly to each other. Here, class members means students of the classroom as well as teacher. Means teacher should also be friendly to the students, otherwise they will hesitate to ask questions and they will not learn freely. If they do not learn freely, then the learning will not be fruitful. Means a classroom must be a cohesive classroom where each member of the class must remain friendly to the other. So here I would like to point it out that cohesiveness is a positive learning environment class in a class. You can mention cohesiveness as the positive or supportive classroom learning environment. If you want your class to be fine and go well, then you have to be your classroom must have cohesiveness, and you as the leader of that class must try to create cohesiveness in your classroom. This is up to you how you can create this dimension of classroom learning environment in your own respective class. It's a positive dimension of classroom learning environment. We will be having negative environment dimensions also, but this one is positive. Then diversity. It indicates existence of variety in the class. It is also a positive dimension, because if the classroom is having variety of the students, variety of the teaching methods, then learning will not be monotonous, will not be boring. So you have to make your own classrooms as far as possible diverse classrooms, having different types of teaching methods, different types of content to be presented to the students. Sometimes you can present through your PPT, sometimes you can give some project works, sometimes you can ask for role playing, and so on and so forth. Means your classroom must be diverse. Otherwise, it will become monotonous and the learning will not be that interesting. So the diversity must be maintained in your classroom without harming the actual outcome of your course or syllabus. Then formality. Sometimes formality plays a positive plays as a positive role in classroom environment, but excess of formality negates classroom learning environment. So if a classroom learning dimension is a positive one, then it will support the learning of the students or in a classroom. If the classroom learning environment that we are discussing here is negative, then it will inhibit the learning. Then you have to decide what to do in your own classroom with the help of these positive as well as learning dimensions. Means you have to promote positive ones and you have to limit and curtail the negative ones to make your classroom more lively, more interactive. Then means more formality, that is the third point. Paying attention to rules, forms, expectations and conventions. If we are expecting too much more than exact capacities of our students, then definitely we will be getting frustrated because we have expected on unreasonable grounds. Means expectations must be reasonable, otherwise it will lead to frustration from the part of students as well as from the part of teachers also. Your class must be formal, but only those formalities which are must to run a classroom smoothly. Next, speed. Speed refers to students or teachers' behavior to do things in a short time. Sometimes we find some students are very fast learners, fast performance, and respond in a very short span of time. But sometimes students seem to be slow learners also. So speed must be regulated as per the demands of your class. The fast learners may be provided with some extra assignments to be disciplined in a class, and slow learners can be or can get supported through the leaders which are fast learners. Means speed can be regulated in a classroom with intended efforts. Here I would also like to focus that in a general classroom, in each and every classroom, if we find the number or percentage of average students is larger as compared to the fast learners and slow learners, means the larger population in a class seems to be average students, and we have to take care of their needs so that we can control the larger population of a class, and in the same time we can arrange to manage fast learners which are few as well as slow learners which are also few in numbers. So it's your ability. Means in theory it seems to be fine, but in practice it is very complex, rigid, but will come through practice of your own in your respective classes. Now comes facilitation. It is a positive classroom learning environment, and it points to the existence of situations which make learning or doing things easy. Means if a teacher is supporting the class to perform complex things so that things may become easy for students, then teacher is doing facilitation in his or her classroom. Even you people have also come to this when you were helping your students to understand complex things with your own help, through your own help. Now it seems that you were facilitating your students to learn complex things with your intended or with your positive support. It's a positive classroom learning environment. We can uh, use it in our own classroom to enhance the learning in a classroom. Friction, it's a negative point, as its name suggests that it's a negative classroom learning environment. And it focuses on the occurrence of difference of opinion leading to argumentation and quarreling. If difference of opinion do not lead to quarreling, then it's fine. But if difference of opinion is leading towards quarreling in a classroom between student and teacher or among students, then it must be taken care of and controlled on time. Otherwise, it will devastate the classroom learning environment and the learning will not take place at all. And the classroom will lead in a negative direction. So in your classroom, friction must be avoided with your own smart efforts. Now, next comes goal direction. Goal direction refers to understanding and acceptance of achievable and appropriate, achievable as well as appropriate. If something is achievable but not appropriate, then it's not a goal directed activity. Appropriate goals of the class and performance of goal oriented behaviors. It's also a positive classroom learning environment dimension. Here we should focus on achievable targets for our students in our classroom, as well as the goals must be appropriate. Here appropriation or appropriate can be understood as related or relevant to the coursework or our curriculum. And goal oriented behaviors lead to fruitful learning in a specified time limit. Otherwise, the time limit will be broken and we will not be able to finish our syllabus and course on time. Means our classroom activities must be goal directed. Favoritism, it is a negative classroom learning or classroom climate dimension. Means to favor someone against the other or favoring persons unequally. Even our constitution focuses equality among all. So how can we can violate our constitution just by practicing a biased approach towards our students in our class? Means we should avoid doing favoritism because it is unjustified, unequal. So next, difficulty. Next dimension is difficulty. It refers to existence of things or ideas that are hard to understand or execute. Here we have to take care of this dimension also. Difficulty for fast learners can be easily taken care of, as well as for average student it is quite controllable, but for our slow learners it is very hard to execute this dimension because they will not be able to understand it our general efforts only. We need some remedial measures to remove the difficulty, and so that difficulty may be removed to the extent that our whole classroom can understand or execute the things or ideas that we want from them to be executed. Means difficulty must be controlled. If difficulty persists, it can be lead to negative classroom learning environment. Apathy, which indicates absence of sympathy or interest and existence of indifference of persons involved in teaching learning process towards each other. It's a negative dimension. If we are apathetic to our students, if the students are apathetic to their peers or colleagues, then learning is not going to take place in its real sense, because sympathy, interest, collaborative efforts, teamwork, they are all required to be learning a fruitful one, and that is why we should try to remove apathy in our classroom learning environment. Otherwise, our classroom will not be that fruitful uh, for our students' learning. Democratic orientation. It indicates that class members treat each other as equals. Yes, exactly. We should follow democratic orientation in our classroom as students as well as teachers also, because each and everybody has its his or her own specific self and qualities which cannot be copied by others. So we should respect the diversity, and there must be democratic orientation of class. Then only we can focus on student centered approach. It's a positive dimension. Cliqueness. It indicates tendency of class members to form a clique, that is a group of persons united by common interest, members of which support each other and shut out others from their company. Cliqueness is very much common in a classroom. What we have to do is just to watch if the group of members is inhibiting others to learn, then we should interfere. Otherwise, members of common interests can be seen everywhere. It cannot be eliminated in from our classrooms, but we should take control of this. Till then, the cliqueness is not going to harm our student as well as our classroom as a whole. Disorganization, it's a negative aspect of a classroom learning environment where wants to upset working of the class. Means if the classroom is upset, then the learning will not take place or will not take place in its real sense. So the class must be organized. For that, the teacher is very responsible, because he is supposed to be the leader of his or her own classroom. So he should assure that disorganization should not take place in his or her own classroom learning environment. Then competition. It refers to occurrence of activities in which students compete. A competition is very much important till it becomes a cutthroat competition. Competition must be in its positive sense, means competition for getting ourselves more and more improved with the help of practice and learning. Competition means unfair competition cannot be supported. So it can, in a nutshell, we can say up to a certain limit or reasonable limit, the competition is very much important. We should promote competition in our classroom also. Healthy competition, not the cutthroat one. Sorry. And another point is creative stimulation. Means refers to teachers' activities to provide conditions and opportunities to stimulate creative thinking. Creative thinking always includes divergent cum convergent thinking. First, we have to think divergently, then we have to converge all the ideas to make a composite and meaningful idea, and it's a positive learning dimension in a classroom. We should try to create those stimulation in our classroom where students may think and act creatively to make our classrooms more interactive and more fruitful. Encouragement, it's also these are the last three ones. Encouragement, as a teacher, as a guardian, you have to provide encouragement for students learning, where it implies teachers behavior to stimulate learning. Earlier was simulate, now it is stimulate learning of students by encouraging their behaviors. If students have done well, they must be provided with positive reinforcement that is positive for their successes. And sometimes some of the negative reinforcement is also important when the students is not doing well and breaking the discipline in the classroom. But the positive one must be focused more as compared to the negative one. Next comes the second last one, that is involvement. Involvement refers to teachers' behavior to structure and monitor students' learning. Means teacher must be a participant itself in the learning of students. Means students cannot learn in isolation. In your class, you must be involved with your students so that your behavior can structure and monitor students' learning. Why? Just because to guide them if they are right or wrong. Last, that is your conformity. Conformity indicates students' actions which are in agreement with what is accepted or required by their teachers. Means you must be a good teacher of having values of a positive classroom so that you can expect your students to be your students to be in conformity with your own expectations or norms of the classroom. If they are following the norms and going with your expectations, then you should confirm their actions by a verbal or non-verbal conformity. Thereby you will be encouraging them to be more confirmed learners in your own classroom. So this was all about classroom learning environment. Now we can proceed. Learning styles. There are lots of learning styles. This is the third section of my presentation. Learning styles. You have to take care of learning styles of the students, not individually, but at least you should know what are different types of learning styles, because if you will not be knowing individual learning styles, then you will not be able to mix them up optimally in your own classroom. Because usually we follow the mixed approach of learning styles. We focus on mixed learning styles, and then accordingly we frame our classroom. So to start with, learning style, it describes how learners gather, sift through, means sail through, interpret, organize, come to conclusions about what? About and store information for further user application. Means students gather information, accumulate information, knowledge, experience, for what? For future use or application of that particular knowledge. As a science teachers, one can know how the theory classes of your own institutions can be helpful for practical aspect when that particular work needs to be done on ground. Next point is, despite the variation in categories of learning styles, the main idea behind learning style is the same, that each learner has a specific learning styles, means which sometimes called preferences of the learner, and he learns best when information is presented to him in this style. Means your students will learn a lot when you will be providing the information in the way in which they want to receive those information or ideas from your side. The message for instructors or teachers like us is that optimal instruction requires diagnosing individuals' learning style. If you are teaching your PhD students or higher classes, you can practice the avoidance of learning styles by you as per the requirements of your individual learners, and find what happens then, and share your experiences with your colleagues also after doing the same. Learning styles and tailoring instructions accordingly, means you have to tailor your instructions as per the learning styles of the individual learner, especially at the level of research teaching or at the level of teaching of PG classes, because undergraduate students are too many. We cannot take care of each and every student learning style. But if we talk about higher, higher classes, means your PG classes, your research classes, we can practice learning styles that suits the individual learner. For that, we have to tailor our instructions accordingly. These are some of the learning styles, types of learning styles. First one is auditory and musical learners or musical learning style. Such type of learners like to hear solutions and examples explained to them, means audible, it must be audible, and may gravitate towards music subjects and group learning as a way to understand information. Auditory learners often have a high aptitude for distinguishing notes and tones in music and speech. While teaching, we change our pitch just to seek the attention. We vary our pitch or voice just to seek the attention. If we want to focus anything, like I want to focus on auditory musical learners, then I will change my pitch of the voice so that you can get attracted if you are not getting bored. So you have to segregate auditory and musical learners by simply understanding that they are very fast, uh, they have very fast understanding and aptitude to distinguish notes, musical notes, and tones in music and speech. They can easily understand if you are happy, if you are angry, if you are focusing on something, then they will be able to catch your pitch, tone, because they are auditory and musical learners. Next, visual and spatial learner. Visual learners like diagrams. You have to teach them through diagrams. Drawing out concepts. You have to draw the concepts on your board or whiteboard or your laptop with the help of a stylus pen, creating them and watching other people create them. You can ask them to create diagrams also, as well as you can direct them to watch other people how they are creating these diagrams, concepts, charts, etc., because they can understand very fast with the help of visual effects, so that they are called visual and spatial learners. You can differentiate your such type of students in your classroom if you try to find out them. It's not that difficult, but needs practice. Then the next category comes verbal learners. What is verbal learning? Verbal learning includes both writing and speaking, means use of words orally as well as in writing. Verbal learners might have a preference for reading and writing. They used to be a good reader as well as a good writer of what? Word, games and poems. Verbal learners know the meanings of a broad category of words. Means their concept clarity regarding words and its meaning is very clear cut. They can easily understand the synonymous and antonyms and can use them effectively also in their own working. Next comes logical and mathematical learner. What we expect from our science students, and not only science students, from all students also. Logical and mathematical learner. It is observed that perhaps unsurprisingly, mathematical learners add towards careers in programming, accountancy, science, research, and other number and pattern oriented careers. It has been quoted by some psychologist or researcher. I am not completely agree, but because it was quoted, I have to point it out. So logical and mathematical learner are those types of learners who are very effective in identifying the pattern of a series or pattern of a diagram, pattern of a verbal or non-verbal figures. Suppose if a series is written like this 1, 4, 6, 8, then they can easily understand the pattern inherent into the series. It may be a word series, maybe a letter series, or so on and so forth. Means they can easily identify the inherent pattern and sequence and logic present in a series of things. So they are called logical and mathematical learner. Now comes physical or kinesthetic learner, commonly called hands-on learners. Means they need to be trained physically to be more dexterous. Kinesthetics prefer to physically engage themselves with the materials or of the subject matter. Suppose if you want to teach any of your students on how a particular machine works, then you have to identify your students if they are physical or kinesthetic learner or not. If they are, so you can pick them up and give them the actual hands-on training, and you will definitely find out that they will learn very fast because they have their own learning style, and that is physical learning style. They learn when they perform something in particular. Social and interpersonal. Inter means between two. Social and interpersonal learner are those learners which show preferences towards groups and collaboration. Means they are very fast learners when they deal with the groups and collaborative learning. Some, but not all, will gravitate towards leadership within a group. Some of them will become a good leader also. Then you have to identify in your own class which students have this skill, whose name is social and interpersonal skill of learning. Next comes solitary and intrapersonal learner. They are different from the previous one, that is social and interpersonal learner. Now we are dealing with solitary and intrapersonal. Intra means within. Solitary learners can be visual, auditory, and physical, verbal or logical, etc. Fulfilling all the needs of a solitary student will ensure they are fully engaged. They are introspective also. They can work well in isolation, and they are prone to the groups, so that students having such learning styles of solitary and intrapersonal will be provided sufficient time and space to introspect themselves, to learn uh, by their own and not in groups. Last one is very much important, that is mixed learning approach. With the large classroom that we have in our undergraduate classrooms, it's not always easy to personalize lessons, as I have already discussed it in the next slide. But using a mixed learning approach through coursework can help you cater to each type of learning style. Means that is why I have already focused that finally you have to practice your mixed learning approach as far as students learning is concerned, but at least you should know what are different types of learning styles, so that you can mix it up in appropriate ratios as per the needs of your large classrooms. Here we can decide to focus on a particular learning type each lesson while incorporating multiple strategies within each lesson. The most important element is first recognizing the differences in student learning. The rest will flow from there. Means we have to follow mixed learning approach, but before that we should know how many students belong to a particular learning style. We have to create a group for them, and if large students, suppose say for example, if your most of the students have physical or kinesthetic learners or learning style, then you have to focus on this for most of the time, and for the rest you can adjust accordingly. So this was the third aspect or third segment of my today's presentation. We have 2 or 3 more segments. I think that you are not getting bored. If till this stage you have any question, you can ask me within a minute or two, so that we can proceed further. Sir, do we have any queries, sir?
We invite questions from the participants.
If not at this stage, we can ask it at the end of this session also.
Okay.
So should we proceed, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now most of you might have thinking that why sir has focused too many things before coming to this section, that is learner centered approaches, because sir was expected to teach this one only. Actually, from my point of view, if you are not well versed with your classroom learning environment dimensions, you don't know what is learning, how it actually takes place, and what are different types of learning styles, then you cannot manage your class well, because most of the teachers can be trained professionally if they have teaching aptitude, but uh, only few teachers without theoretically understanding these things can manage their class well. But I am sure that after going through these some slides and discussions with me, you will be able to uh, execute your classroom activities even more effectively. Okay, learner centered approaches. This is a very short diagram which we can start this section of my presentation. Here you can easily observe and see that learner is in the focus, is between various activities, and different activities are hovering around that particular learner. Here the learner is means you, the participants, and in your own classrooms the learner will be your own students. If you are facing some problem in this classroom, then you can imagine about your students' own difficulties also. So my focus and point of view is that you should try to manage your classrooms very effectively with the help of these learner-centered approaches. Means knowledge information, community or syllabus, instructor means you, all must cater to the needs, requirements, interest, speed, and curiosity of the learner. That is learner-centered approach. Earlier, 25 to 30 years back, it was teacher-centered approach. What was that? Teacher was used to prepare the lesson according to his or own interest as well as requirement of the syllabus, and just put this lesson plan and class for the students without understanding students' perspective and students' requirement. So this type of learning seems to be unpsychological, because psychological studies have shown that if the learner's need will be taken care of, then only the learning will be fruitful. Now, the 4 pillars of student-centered learning. The first one is personalized learning, means students' own speed of learning, own interest, own learning style. And the second one is learning without limits. It does not mean that learning do not have limits. Here, we should try to conceptualize that the learning without limit means students' relevant questions which are not directly linked with the syllabus can also be answered if the time schedule of the class allows. Means curiosity and creativity of the students must be welcomed and appreciated. Not only the opinion of teacher should matter as far as selection and rejection of questions from the part of students is concerned. If the question is important, if the question is directly or indirectly related with the syllabus, then these questions and answers must be satisfied by the respective teachers. Then third comes student-driven learning. Means the driver of learning must be student. The learning must take place as per the need, speed, and requirement of the student, not as per the expertise, as per the skill and knowledge of the teacher. If the teacher is lacking what student wants to know, then the teacher must get confirmed about the asked facts, and then those facts must be presented in front of students. Learning, the fourth pillar is competence. The spelling must be CE. Competence based learning means if student is competent enough to do a particular thing, then he must be appreciated to do that thing only. If he is not well versed in any field, suppose if your engineering student is competent enough to deal with electrical department or electrical sections of engineering coursework, then he must be promoted to that only. If you think your student is well versed in the field of computer and programming, then he must be directed to opt computer science accordingly. You and parents must not force your own choice on the students. That is learner-centered approach. 10 characteristics of learner-centered practices for remote learning. Means the learning that is where the students and teachers are not present physically, face to face. So you can have a look, very quick look. These characteristics, the learner-centered approaches must be personal, must have some agency between teacher and taught, must promote inquiry, must be collaborative learning. The learning must be of authentic concepts. Critiques and revision must be present. Productive struggle must be there. Wasteful exercises must be avoided. Students must have some goals, as well as they will be accountable for that only. That also some models of learning must be prepared, so that distance learning may take place, and there must be some reflection of what students have already learned. Next slide. Now I am going to ask you, the participants, from you the question that which classroom do you have? There are two types of classroom. Teacher centered has been shown with some blue color, and the student driven or student centered class has been shown with the color green. Now this slide is for you and your perusal, that which classroom do you have? Your classroom consists of which type of approach? You can just point it out. If it is your planned topics, your written lesson plans, your delivery content, your assigned activities, your own assessment techniques of your students, then it is teacher centered. But if you are planning your topics as students as partners, then it is student driven. Means you have to do your own work. It is not that all the things have to do by students only, but you as a teacher should plan topics, but students can be asked as a partner in your topic planning, right? If you are writing a lesson plan, means if you are preparing your lesson plans in writing or in your conceptual clarity, then choices of depth and scope of topics must be asked from your students also. If you are going to deliver the content, means your teaching methods, your teaching style must suit the choice of how they will learn. Means you have to take care of their learning style also. Assign activities. If you are assigning them the activities, take responsibility to learn. The students must take your assigned activities, and students must think and promise you that they are ready to do it mentally. Otherwise, if they are not motivated to do the assigned activities from your side, then learning will not take place. Then you have to assess students, means students assessment for evaluation of the learning. Then you can also ask self and peer assessment. What is self and peer assessment? You are very much responsible for your students learning. That is why you plan to assess your students learning, but you can also consult peer students or classroom just for student peer assessment, so that to match your own assessment techniques. If you found a higher correlation between your personal assessment techniques and peer and self assessment techniques, then it's fine, you are doing well. If there is any difference, then you have to correct it, modify it accordingly. Now, learner-centered approach is one where the complete learning or e-learning experience. Here, learning or e-learning will go side by side, and there is no difference. E-learning and learning experience is focused on the learners. For this, our courses need to be very user-friendly. so that learners can navigate the course without any difficulty. And learners should find the course relevant to their challenges and learning. If the course for the learners is not meaningful, then the learners will not be interested in doing that course. So you have to take care of that. The course that you are going to offer to your students means this can also be understood at the level of your institution also, not only your own effort will work. So you with your institution should think those courses will be offered only which have some importance for students learning needs. The courses should include real life examples as much as possible that learners can relate to. Means real life examples can be related with learners own activity. What are the advantages of learner centered approaches? We will be summarizing in these 6 to 7 points in a short span of time. Increased participation. If we follow all are the advantages of learner centered approaches, increased participation will take place because learners will be getting ensured personalized and convenient learning experiences. Then retention of knowledge will be increased because provision of interesting learning with more engaging in simulating content. Simulation means creation of a environment where student will feel that they are doing in real world. Like we use simulator to train pilots of the aircraft. Boosts work performance because such type of approaches include lots of scenarios, use of case studies, role plays, etc. Then development of problem solving skills. Problem solving skills needs convergent and divergent skills, include games, quizzes, and challenges. Next advantage of learner centered approaches fosters collaborative learning by providing a way where learners have to involve their peers and superiors in completing the course and do the teamwork. Teamwork pays much to the learners. Makes learning more fun, not a boring one. With the use of games and stories in e-learning, it makes learning more fun. Videos with the help of podcasts. You might be aware of podcasts. Then practical assignments, etc. It also facilitates personalized learning as all learners do not have the same learning needs. I'm just going to repeat it and you have to focus upon it, that all learners do not have the same learning needs. So course developers may include supplementary materials also as and where it is required. Then effective classroom management, the last section of the present slide, how you will be effectively managing your own classroom. So first we should know what is classroom management. Classroom, I will be discussing the techniques one by one. Classroom management refers to the wide variety of skills and techniques that teachers use to keep students organized, orderly, focused, attentive, on task, and academically productive during a class or lecture. Not only this, when classroom management strategies are executed effectively, teachers minimize the behaviors that impede learning, means that inhibits learning, that minimizes learning. I'm just going to repeat, you have to focus on the bold ones. When classroom management strategies are effectively executed, then teachers minimize the behaviors that impedes learning. On the other hand, maximize the behaviors that facilitate or enhance learning. Earlier, when we were discussing the classroom learning environment and its 18 dimensions, then we have gone through some inhibitive classroom learning environments and some supportive classroom learning environments. If you manage your effective classroom, If you manage your classroom effectively, then you will minimize the behaviors that inhibits learning of students, and you will be maximizing, on the other hand, you will be maximizing the behaviors that facilitate or enhance learning. You can watch this video. I will be sharing this link in a while through this chat box. Next slide. Effective classroom management strategies. These 7 to 8 strategies you can follow. You have to follow entry routine in your classroom. Is a technique in which teachers establish a consistent daily routine. जैसे ही as and when a student enters the classroom, teacher starts preparing learning materials, making sheet assignments, passing in homeworks, or doing a brief physical warm up. Sometimes we call our students who get warmed up as and when we enter the class, which these are the examples of entry routines. It can avoid, this technique can avoid disorder and squandered time that can characterize the beginning of a class period. Means you have to follow entry routine by your own specific methods. Now, next one is do now. Is a technique where a brief written activity or an oral activity that students are given as soon as they arrive in the classroom. As and when a student arrives in the classroom, a teacher, and formally the class begins, you should start instructing do it now to your students. And this technique is intended to get students settled, focused, productive, and prepared for instruction as quickly as possible. Means you are just making them attentive by uh, awarding him or her or your students some short works that you are expecting to do them right now. Tight transitions means your transitions from one section to another section in a particular classroom do not waste the time. It's a technique which teachers establish transition routines where students learn and can execute quickly without taking too much time and repeatedly without much direction from the teacher. Means students must be attentive when they have to follow the transition. They do not waste time while transiting to from a particular thing to another, as well as they can do it repeatedly. Teachers are not expected to repeat transitions on a regular basis because students are aware how and when to transit. Suppose if a teacher asks, now it's reading time for you students, then the students will stop all the works which they were already doing and just focusing on reading time. They will read what they have got instruction from their teacher. Means transition from lecture to reading to lecture, and lecture to role playing must be tight without wastage of time. This will lead to effective classroom management from your side. Seat signals. These are the signals, or these are the technique used in a classroom where students use non-verbal signals while seated to indicate that they need something. Means if he or she needs a new pencil, new instrument, uh, needs a rest room break, or having some problem, so the student will give you the seat signals, and for that you have to train your student. Then only seat signals work. Means this technique establishes expectations for appropriate communication and helps to minimize disruptions during class. Non-verbal, without speaking a word, he can use signals, seat signals, and you can understand what he or she is expecting from you without disturbing the whole class. This will lead to effective classroom management strategy. Now next comes props. Is the act of publicly recognizing and praising students. Means the recognition, the praise, the encouragement must be done in public by you. If your student performs well in examination or answers a very difficult question in your classroom, then you should praise and give him a positive feedback and positive reinforcement right now in front of the whole class, so that he can get motivated to answer more and more, and others also can follow if they have the ability to follow. But here you have to be very cautious and careful when you are giving a negative reinforcement, because public negative reinforcement may lead to personality disorders among the students, because nobody wants to get humiliated in front of so many people. But on the other hand, if you praise someone in front of so many people, large public, then it will act positively. So mind the difference between positive feedback, when you have to give positive feedback and what will be the conditions, and when and how you have to provide the negative feedback to your students, so that you can effectively manage your classroom. Non-verbal intervention. When teachers establish eye contact, you might be practicing it due to online classroom situations. We are not able, or we are not in a position to practice it, but more or less we all as a teacher use this non-verbal communication with our students, like eye contact or make gestures that let students know they are off task, means they are not doing well, not paying attention or misbehaving. It is not required or necessary to shout in the classroom on a child and remove him or her from your class, because it will disturb whole class and ruin your purpose of classroom management. In place of it, you can give your non-verbal cues and make some gestures to get your students disciplined or avoid misbehave from students. The technique helps teachers efficiently and silently manage student behavior without disrupting a lesson or class. Positive group correction is a quick, affirming verbal reminder that you have to go through this whole paragraph with me. Positive group correction is a quick, affirming verbal reminder that lets a group of students know what they should be doing. Related techniques are anonymous individual correction, means without taking any name, individual must be directed from your side. A verbal reminder that is directed at an anonymous student was related with anonymous individual correction. On the other hand, private individual correction, a reminder given to an individual student as discreetly as possible, means in private. And lightning quick public correction, a quick positive reminder that tells an individual student what to do instead of what not to do. You have to point it out. These again, that is anonymous individual correction when it is desired, and how it can be done. Then private individual correction, what is this and how can you perform it in your class. And last, lightning quick public correction of student. And another one is do it again. This is the last one, is used when students do not perform a basic task correctly and the teacher asks them to do it again and again in the correct way. Till then it is corrected, students can repeat it again and again. This technique establishes what this technique does actually. It establishes and reinforces consistent expectations for quality work. Means students expect that they will be punished if they will not be doing quality work. They have to work it again and again. So in place of doing it again and again, we have to perform a quality effort so that it can be appreciated by the teachers. This is the Bloom's taxonomy table. You can have this. I will be sharing this after the session through your coordinator, sir. And these are the references. Thank you very much, participants and organizers. Now the session is open for you. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.